Hello students. So in the chapter pollution of air and water, now we will continue the topic that is the eutrophication. So eutrophication, that means the excessive amount of nutrients if it has been mixed with the water. If it is present in the water, then that is the eutrophication. So eutrophication here, that will continue. Now it has been said that so eutrophication, already we have told, that is the excessive nutrients if it is present in the water, then it will be harmful for our food chain also, right? So let me take first the pointer. So aquatic ecosystem. So aquatic ecosystem, that means here you know that in this ecosystem, this aquatic ecosystem, this is the home for so many animals and also so many plants also, right? So that means both complex and simple plants and animals we have underwater, and it may be the ocean, it may be the seas also, it may be the lake also, rivers also, but these aquatic ecosystems are the homes for the animals and plants, several elements and plants that are inside the water bodies. Okay, so the process of eutrophication that destroys the balance in the ecosystem. So more algae will be die. If algae will die at that time, the here you can see that that will pollute the air. So this is the natural process due to which the water pollution causes. So the eutrophication, the process of eutrophication that destroys the balance in the ecosystem by favoring the growth of the simple plants life and greatly decrease of biodiversity of the ecosystem by killing several desirable species, because several desirable species, if they will die, then total ecosystem, the food chain ecosystem and the food chain, you can see that that will be disrupted. So here the eutrophication, this is a natural cause which is the result is the water pollution. Okay, now the causes of the eutrophication. Now the causes of the eutrophication, you know that excessive amount of nutrients are there. Now what are the nutrients are there? Excessive amount of nitrogen, excessive amount of phosphorus, excessive amount of phosphorus. So this, if excessive amount of these two chemical you have, that means it will resist or it will limits the growth of the plant's life in the ecosystem. And when water bodies are overly enriched with this nitrogen and phosphorus, the growth of the algae, plankton, other simple plants life is favored over the growth of more complex plants life. So algae that will the algae, plankton, the simple plants life will be increased, the growth will be high rather than the complex plants life. So these are the causes of eutrophication. Mainly the nitrogen and the phosphorus, this limits the growth of the plant life. In the phosphorus cycle, after that you can study that how do water bodies become overly enriched. So phosphorus is considered one of the primary limiting factors of growth of the plant. So we already studied that phosphorus and just a minute. Phosphorus and nitrogen, these are the main limiting factors for the growth of the plant life in freshwater ecosystems. And several resources are there that already we have discussed. And nitrogen is an important limiting factor for the growth of algae. Phosphates tend to stick to the soil and transported along with it. And soil erosion is a major contributor to the phosphorus enrichment of water bodies. So soil erosion we have to stop. soil erosion. We have to stop soil erosion, and how you can do this? Only if you do the tree plantation. Then some other phosphorus-rich sources that enrich the water bodies with the nutrient, that is the fertilizers, untreated sewage, detergents containing phosphorus, industrial discharge of waste, and primary contributors, that is to eutrophication, include agriculture and industrial waste. So these are the primary contributors. So primary contributors to the eutrophication. That first one is the agriculture, because we are using phosphates, this type of fertilizers. So agriculture, so fertilizers, and from that the phosphorus will be mixed with the water. And another thing, that is the industrial wastes. Okay. Now what happens to the huge biomass of algae in eutrophic water? So excessive growth of algae in eutrophic water is accompanied by the generation of large biomass of dead algae. And if this dead algae sinks to the bottom of the water body, where they are broken down to bacteria. So then they are broken down to bacteria, and which consume the oxygen in the process. So there will be lack of oxygen. At that time it will affect the marine life of the seas. Okay, so that means the excessive growth of algae in the eutrophic waters, that will generate that large biomass of dead algae, and dead algae, then it will be that it will sink at the bottom of the water body, and then they are broken down to bacteria, and these bacteria will take the oxygen, and so there is a loss of oxygen in the marine life. Now the overconsumption of oxygen leads to the overconsumption of oxygen that leads to the hypoxic conditions. What is this conditions? This is the conditions which the availability of oxygen is very, very low. That is the hypoxic oxygen condition. And hypoxic condition at the lower levels of water body led to the suffocation, and it leads to suffocation and eventually death of larger life in the aquatic system. So larger life that forms such as fish. Okay, So here you can see that the eutrophication, how it causes the death of total marine ecosystem or aquatic ecosystem. Here what happens, the huge amount of, due to the increased amount of phosphorus and nitrogen, huge amount of algae will be there, and after the death of this algae, they will sink under the water body, and here they will be converted to the bacteria, and that bacteria, huge amount of bacteria, that will take the oxygen. So there will be a low oxygen in the water bodies, that is called the hypoxic conditions. And due to the hypoxic conditions at the lower levels of the water body, what happens? Most of the fishes, they are feeling suffocation, and after suffocation it may be death of the larger amount of fishes will be there. So if larger amount of dead fishes are inside the water body, at that time you can see that the total water will be polluted. So classification of the eutrophication now. Now there are two types of eutrophication process. One is the anthropogenic eutrophication, another is the natural eutrophication. So here the anthropogenic eutrophication, this is caused by human activity. This is not the natural one. And here agricultural farms, golf course, lawns that are supplied with the nutrients by the humans in the form of fertilizers. And these fertilizers are washed away by rains and eventually find their way into water bodies such as lakes and rivers. Okay. So here you can see that these fertilizers are washed away by rains and eventually find their way into water bodies such as lakes and rivers. Okay. So this is the anthropogenic eutrophication. So anthropogenic eutrophication, that is caused by human activity. So here you can see that residential runoff that is coming to this water body, and agricultural livestock runoff, urban runoff, these are also included in the river. And the river water, whenever it is going to the ocean, and you can see that will be polluted also. And roads and septic tank, from septic tank also the water is coming to this river. And here the eutrophication, excess nitrogen and phosphorus, that will be mixed with the fresh water, and there will be nutrient cycling, and algae bloom will be there, algal bloom, and this will export, and sedimentation of the algae, death algae will be there. So in this case the oxygen will be less and the suffocation will occur. Due to this suffocation, there will be the aquatic animals, they will die. Okay. Now, when introduced to an aqueous ecosystem, fertilizers supply the plentiful nutrients to algae and plankton. Then results the eutrophication in the water body. Overpopulation places a huge demand in industrial and agricultural expansion. So that leads to the deforestation. And when this occurs, the soil erodes more easily. So soil erosion, this is one result of the deforestation. Okay, this is result of the soil erosion. This is the result of the deforestation, and this resulting in increased soil deposits in the water bodies. So this results soil deposits in water bodies. Okay. So the soil is rich of phosphorus, and it can lead to the eutrophication and severely damage the ecosystem of the aquatic life. And when sewage pipes and industrial waste are directed to the water bodies, then nutrients present in the sewage and other waste also increase the rate at which the eutrophication occurs. So that means the sewage pipe and industrial waste, these are also responsible for the eutrophication. And that means eutrophication if causes, that means it will cause the water pollution. Now the natural eutrophication. So natural eutrophication refers to the excessive enrichment of water bodies via natural event. Okay, excessive enrichment of water bodies via the natural events. Now, as example, in this picture also you can see nutrients from the land can be washed away in flood. So natural calamity, that is the flood. So this natural calamity, due to this, the nutrients from the land that will be washed away due to the flood and deposit into the lake and river. Here you can see that after flood the sediments at this level, whereas before this you have this level, okay, the lower level. And these water bodies become overly enriched with the nutrients and enabling excessive growth of algae and other simple plants. And excessive growth of algae, again the same procedure will happen. The algae will die and it will just sink in at the sediments, and you can see that after this bacteria will be created, and that will convert it to bacteria, and those bacteria will use the oxygen and that means there will be some lack of oxygen, and the other animals also, aquatic animals, they will suffer from suffocation and certainly they will die. Okay, so this is the natural eutrophication, and this is due to the natural calamity like flood. And this process of natural eutrophication is much slower when compared to the anthropogenic eutrophication. And this process is also dependent on the temperature of the environment, and it may even be complemented by the temperature changes brought on global warming. Okay. Now, effects of the eutrophication. There is adverse effect of the eutrophication here. Now you can see that the eutrophication on aquatic bodies include the decrease in biodiversity, increase in toxicity of water body, change in species dominance. These three are the effects, and there are, apart from this, there are several effects also. So here you can see no eutrophication. This is the picture where you have more eutrophication. Now some important effects, that is the phytoplanktons grow much faster in such situation. These phytoplankton species are toxic and are inedible, and gelatinous zooplankton blooms first in these waters. Gelatinous zooplankton blooms first in these waters and increase the biomass of epiphytic and benthic algae can be observed in eutrophic waters. So there are a lot of effects of the eutrophication. Here you can see that phytoplanktons grow much faster in this eutrophication situation, and here you can see that the gelatinous zooplankton that blooms first in this situation, and here in these waters an increased biomass of epiphytic and benthic algae can be observed. Now gelatinous zooplankton, these are fragile animals. Gelatinous zooplankton, these are fragile animals that live in the water column in the ocean. Their delicate bodies have no parts and are easily damaged or destroyed. Gelatinous zooplankton are often transparent. All jellyfish are gelatinous zooplankton, but not all gelatinous zooplankton are jellyfish. Okay, so all jellyfish, these are gelatinous zooplankton. Now, significant changes arises in the species composition, macrophytes and biomass. The water lost its transparency and develops bad smell and color. And the treatment of this water becomes very, very difficult. And depletion of the dissolved oxygen in water body, that will cause the suffocation, and ultimately the final result is the dead animals. Okay, the animals will die. Here you can see this water. This water is not possible to purify this water. So frequent fish kills, incidents occurs, and many desirable fish species are removed from the water body. So frequent fish kills, and population of shellfish and harvestable fish are lowered, and aesthetic value of the water body diminished significantly. New effects of eutrophication. First is the hypoxia and anoxia. First is the hypoxia and anoxia. Now, hypoxia, already we know that this is the lack of oxygen present here. And anoxia, this anoxia happens when our body and brain completely loses its oxygen supply. So anoxia is usually a result of hypoxia. That means this anoxia, this is no oxygen. Okay, and increased sulfides and H2S, increased phytobiomass and have, and increased phytobiomass and have, and here you can see that increased turbidity, decreased biodiversity, loss of seagrass and kelp beds, coral reef destruction, marine mammal and seabird deaths, and socio-economic impact. What are the socio-economic impact? Decrease in the fisheries and agricultural yields, fish kills, shellfish poisoning, contamination of aquifers, taste, odor, NO3, NO2. So the socio-economic effect, we have the socio-economic effect, that is the decreased fisheries and aquaculture yields. Okay, that means fish will be killed. That's why fisheries, we will get less amount of fish, and shellfish poisoning, that will occur. Then contamination of aquifers, taste, odor, NO3 and NO2, and loss of tourism revenues also. And decrease in biodiversity, that when aquatic ecosystem is enriched with the nutrients, as you know that there will be this is very unnatural thing, and at that time with the nutrients by either natural and artificial means, the conditions become extremely beneficial to primary producers, and algae and other species utilize these nutrients and increase in population, that is observed. So that means decrease in the biodiversity, that will happen. Okay. So these are the different causes of eutrophication we have studied, and effects of eutrophication, classification of eutrophication, and there are effects of eutrophication here. And here you can see that the algae blooms hindered the flow of sunlight to the bottom of aquatic body and cause wide swings to the dissolved oxygen levels in the water. And when dissolved oxygen in the water reduces, then suffocate, then the water aquatic animals, they will die. Aquatic animals, they will die definitely. Okay. Another thing, that is the increase in water toxicity. A few algae water toxicity here. A few algae are toxic to many plants and animals. Many plants and animals. When these algae bloom in eutrophic waters, they release the neurotoxins and hepatotoxins. So these neurotoxins and hepatotoxins, these toxins also move up the food chain by shellfish and other marine animals, and this led to the death of many animals. Okay, and toxic algal blooms can also be harmful for humans and are the root cause of many problems, that is neurotoxic, paralytic, diarrheatic, shellfish poisoning. So there are neurotoxic, paralytic, diarrheatic, shellfish poisoning may occur. So due to the increase in water toxicity, it has the impact on the human life also. Now, invasion of new species. So, a limiting nutrient that corresponds to a water body can be made abundant by the eutrophication process. So, here you can see that it shifts the species composition and aquatic body and ecosystem surrounding it. So, new species, you can see that this invasion of the new species, that will be limited. And if a nitrogen deficient water body is suddenly enriched with it, many other competitive species might relocate to the water body and outcompete the original inhabitants of the ecosystem. So, new species invading the eutrophic conditions is the common carp, which has adapted to this condition. Common carp. Okay. Now, what are the adverse effects? What are the adverse effects of the eutrophication? Let me change the pen color. The algal blooms in the water body can inhibit the supply of sunlight at the lower depth, and this can pose a threat to the survival of many plants and animals. The depletion of the oxygen levels in the water body due to this phenomenon also has an adverse effect on the local atmosphere. Okay. Now, what is anthropogenic eutrophication? It is a type of eutrophication that is a result of human activity and is generally caused by the influx of potassium rich fertilizers into the aqueous body. Another root cause of this is deforestation, which causes the erosion and transportation of nutrient-rich soil into water body. Next, so this question is over. How can eutrophication occur naturally? Many natural phenomena such as the flooding or lakes or rivers can wash away the nutrient-rich soil from the land surrounding the water bodies. Just a minute. This nutrient rich soil can promote the growth of algae in the aqueous body. However, this is a rather slow process. Okay. Next question. What are the measures that can be taken to prevent the eutrophication? The process can be controlled by preventing the inflow of phosphorus rich substances into the water bodies, avoiding the overuse of fertilizers and the proper channeling of agricultural wastes also help in the prevention of eutrophication. Next, what happens during eutrophication? So this question answer we will do later on. So till now, so this is what are the measures that can be taken to prevent the eutrophication. Up to this much for today, and thank you all.